Hey guys, hope everybody is doing well. I just was starting to edit something, and so I figured this would be a good opportunity to do a quick online training. I do have people ask me what my process is and kind of how I edit these stories, and so I figured I would show you guys what my process is in doing these video stories that you see on a Sunday or for an event. So, yesterday we did a quick story with Aaron at his house, and so we just did a quick interview. It wasn't too crazy. We were on a time crunch, so we weren't able to get a whole bunch of B-roll. Ideally, I would love to take 2 days, either a full day or 2 days, to shoot a story, because that way you can get the interview done and then get a lot of different B-roll and kind of like really capture their lives and their full story. But since we only had a day, well, not even a day, we only had a couple hours, we were just able to do the interview. So I'm doing a 1 day turnaround for the men's event, which is in less than, actually it's in about 24 hours. So I have about 24 hours to finish this video. And so I wanted to kind of show you guys my process. And so I've already started a little bit here, but usually I'll create, once I open Premiere and get all my clips in and everything, I'll create two sequences. So I've already created my first sequence, and so I can name that interview. And then what I'll also do is create a second sequence, and I'll call that main, for the main video. And so what I'll do is I'll put the entire interview in one sequence, and then I will cut and paste the story together in the main sequence. And so I just started adding the interview to this sequence here, so I'm gonna continue doing that. And whenever I shoot, let me turn the volume down a little bit so it doesn't blast your ears off.
Just be there for it.
So whenever I shoot an interview, I always record the audio separately. So I have my audio down here, my video up here. So right now I'm just in the process of syncing the audio and the video, which can be a little, it can be a little strenuous depending on how. For this it's not bad because I just hit record and I just let it record all the way through. But in other scenarios it can be kind of tough. So there are programs that you can use that sync the audio and video for you, and they're about $300. So, but I just usually do it myself. I'll do it manually. So I'm gonna look for the place where I clapped. So I'm looking here, and I can I might be able to see where it is. Let's see. 612, 611. So this is the first one here. So I'm looking at the number. Okay. Oh, there it is. So once I zoom in, then I can really see a lot better, and then I see here that's where I clapped. So I'm gonna match that up down here. Okay. I can go back to my video, and I'm just gonna drag the video in on top and make sure that it's synced.
And then I was about to drop a mixtape and then.
Okay, so that looks pretty good. And once I sync the first clip, the camera will continuously record, so it automatically syncs, which is nice.
Your fellowship with the Lord.
Okay, cool. So we got all the video and the audio synced. And the next thing that I do is, oh yeah, so quick note, if you notice that the picture here does not look to the right size, right? Because it's not. If you've noticed, at i5 we have a pretty large screen, and that is this size. If you're wondering of the dimensions are 3375 by 1080. So we are currently not shooting in 4K. If we were shooting in 4K, I would actually have a lot more room to work with. We did shoot in 4K for the I Am Christmas event, so if you go back and watch that on YouTube, you'll be able to see a pretty good quality difference. But in this case, what I usually do is I have to crop in pretty significantly. So I crop in about almost 200% right there. Um, so in that case, when I know that I'm gonna have to crop in like that, when I'm out here shooting, I always have to remember to shoot wider than I normally would, because I know that when I come into post, I'm gonna have to crop in almost 200%, 176. So that's something that I always have to keep in mind whenever I'm shooting for i5 Church. I know that the screen size is pretty large, pretty wide. So yeah, that's something that I always have to keep in mind. So yeah, once I do all that, I do all my crop ins and all that good stuff. Then I will actually go through the entire interview and I will listen for different points that I want to add. So one thing that I do during the actual shoot is, while we were shooting, is I was listening to different things that he said and I was taking notes in my mind, like, because I was actually doing the interview, but as he was talking, I was taking note in my head and saying to myself, okay, I'm going to remember what he said there. I definitely want to use that, or remember where that pause is. So I'm definitely going to use that. Sometimes I'll take notes on my phone also. So that's also something that I can do. So like I said, what I'll do is go through the whole interview. The interview is not super long. It's about 20 minutes, I guess. I mean, it could be longer. So, 20 minutes is not too bad. But I'll kind of scrub through and listen for things that I want to add and put into the story. So I'm going to add my markers. And yeah, once I do that, then... Okay guys, so I've made a few marks already. I've gone through about 4 minutes of the footage here, really about 5 minutes of the footage, and I've made a few markers. And so these little markers right here, those indicate what I want to use. Okay, so there's a few things that I want to show you. I won't be able to show you my entire edit process essentially, because it's going to take a few hours, but I will show you, once I show you kind of what I do to begin with, then it's pretty much repetitive. So I'll show you these 2 steps that I take, and then once you see that, like, that's pretty much what I repeat as I go along. And so then I'll show you guys the finished product after it's all done. Okay, so I have made some cuts here and some markers, and so I just want to show you guys what I am looking at here. So I'm listening to this.
I was in the streets, just like I grew up in the projects of East Baltimore.
Okay, so he starts out saying I was in the streets, da 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 da. And so I'm kind of looking for a place where he kind of starts a clean sentence where I say, like, okay, this will be a good place to start. So if you listen...
I was in the streets, just like I grew up in the projects of East Baltimore,
And so when he says I grew up in the projects of East Baltimore, I figured, okay, that's a good place to start this story. So I'm going to put that marker here. And what I can actually do is, if I hit M to put that marker there, and if I double click it, I can actually title it, so I can say grew up, or, or whatever. And there, when I can see there, that's what that is used for, right? So he talks a little bit.
I grew up in the projects of East Baltimore, seen a lot of drugs, so seen a lot of hustlers, I had a great mother, but, the environment that we was in.
So he talks a little bit about his environment. So I'm going to use this whole section right here. And so what I'm going to do is I actually am going to copy that, and then I'm going to come over to my main right here, and then I pasted it. I literally just hit copy, and then I pasted it right here. Oh yeah, and I have my music too. So I just added a little music, and it kind of helps you feel it out a little bit.
I grew up in the projects of East Baltimore, seen a lot of drugs, so seen a lot of hustlers, I had a great mother, but, the environment that we was in, it was drug infested.
Okay, so, right there, if I come over to my main right here, so he says the environment that we were in, it was drug infested, and so there I switched to our second camera. So we shot with 2 cameras, And one of the big reasons that we shoot with two cameras and so is so I can cut easily, so I don't have to worry about adding a whole lot of B-roll and things like that. Another big reason is, if I show you over here, is so I avoid jump cutting. Okay, so jump cutting is like a big no-no, and I see it a lot in films. Even I've even seen it in like a few Hillsong films, like a jump cut. And that's a big no-no, unless you're doing it for an artistic effect, which I have done before, but in this case we don't want to do that. And so jump cutting is basically you're cutting from one frame to another frame, but like within a different, but it's like a different time, okay? So if you look here in this, the program here, so you see that cut right there? So you see he's kind of tilted this way, and then in this sequence, in this shot, he's sitting up straight. So that's the jump cut. So, and I'll show you why I cut it there. So if I come over here,
became really good at it, made a lot of money.
So he's talking about sold drugs, became really good at it, made a lot of money.
Really good at it, made a lot of money.
Okay, and so right there, he's kind of, trying to figure out what to say, trying to come up with words. So he's saying ums, which is very common, especially in interviews. But I want to take out all of those ums, I want his interview to seem really seamless, right? And that's part of what part of what we're supposed to do. We want to make them sound good. We don't want to make it look like that they were kind of fishing for words. And so I'm not going to use any of those ums, and I'm going to skip right to this marker right here where he says that he hurt a lot of people.
Hurt a lot of people.
Okay. So he says, made a lot of money. There's like 10 seconds of ums, and then he says,
hurt a lot of people.
Hurt a lot of people, right? So I'm going to copy that and then paste it here. So it sounds a lot more seamless. So if you listen here.
The money. Made a lot of money. Hurt a lot of people.
Okay. And the reason the volume is down is because I did not paste the volume settings. So here we go.
Really good at it. Made a lot of money. Hurt a lot of people.
Okay. So there you can see it doesn't look like he's, it makes it sound a lot more seamless. It doesn't look like he's saying because I cut all that out. And because we use two cameras, instead of having that jump cut, I'm going to switch to the second camera. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy my settings. So I'm going to highlight this bottom one here. Actually, let me make sure. Yeah. So I'm going to highlight this bottom video here and copy, because I'm copying the scale settings, and I'm going to paste it, Option V. I'm going to paste emotion, and I'm going to paste it here.
Hurt a lot of people.
So, and I'm just going to do that actually for the rest of this interview, so I don't have to worry about doing that every time. There we go. So now, if I hit the little eyeball here and turn the top layer off, I can see that the rest of this is the size that it should be. So I'm just going to toggle that back on. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do for the rest of the video. So I'm going to keep going through it and marking my spots, marking what I want to use, making sure that he sounds seamless, making sure that it makes sense. A lot of times, keep in mind when you're editing a story like this, you're pretty much in control. You tell the story. You can tell the story the way that you want to tell it. And so, like, there's a point in here where he talks about how he wanted to make music and how, he was in the studio a lot. So I probably won't use a whole lot of that because it's a little bit irrelevant to his story. But in that case, I'm still going to make it seem seamless and make it make sense. So in the end, we have this 20-minute interview, but in the end, it'll probably end up being between 2.5 and 3 minutes. So those are my tips. Use your markers, make sure you go through the whole thing, and figure out which parts you want to use. Remember, like you don't have to use everything that you have shot. You're in control. You get to decide what goes in and what is taken out as the editor. Okay, so now that I have finished putting together the story, I'm just going to make a few last touches before I export it. And so, as you see, I have my whole sequence. The whole thing came out to almost 3 minutes long, a little over 2.5 minutes, and I have it in my main sequence here. And all I did was just take those clips from the interview here and marked them up. So as you see where I've cut and pasted over into my main sequence here, and I made sure that I frequently was cutting cameras. So we use 2 cameras for a reason, so it's not just one shot, and also so I can cut in different places. And so because I may want to make it sound like he's starting a whole different sentence or something like that when he's actually babbling. So we have our 2 different cameras here. And the last thing that I'm going to do is just show you a little bit how I color correct. And so I'm going to try and mimic, try to do over what I did here. So I've already done it, but I'm going to try and do it again here. So I didn't do a whole lot. I did very minimal coloring in this case because the color and the lighting was already looking pretty good. So I come over here to effects, I type in color, and I pick a Lumetri color, and I will just drag that onto the clip. And then I'll come down here and go to basic. And usually with something like this, I may bring up the exposure a little bit. I will give a lot of contrast, so I'll put it at 45. And our highlights are good, our shadows are looking pretty good. So I'm gonna come down here. I don't usually give a whole lot of saturation. A lot of people think that more saturation is good, but not necessarily. So I'm gonna keep it at 100 for now, keep it where it's at. But what I like to do is if I toggle down the little creative tab, I will put the film fade up. So I think I had it at about 30 or so. So I'm going to put the film fade up at 30. Let me see what I had it here. I had it at 35, so I had it at 35 and a half, so I'll put it at 35.5. Oops, not too much. And that just kind of gives it a nice film look, giving it that nice fade there, so you can see the difference a little bit. So bring it up, so yeah, I'll put it at about 35, which is fine there. And then you can also give your highlights and your shadows different tints. I'm going to leave that alone for now as well. And then usually I'll come down to curves, and I will bring this up just a little bit, and then I'm going to take the red curve and bring it down a tad. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I may bring up the saturation just a little bit to give them a little color, but other than that, that's pretty much it. Let's see if I can match it. Oh yeah, what else did I do? Oh yeah, I think I took this one. Now that I see it, I gave it a little bit of a green, a little bit of a greenish, just a little bit. You don't want to go crazy, right? So, and if you mess up, if you do something like that, you can always hit Command-Z, undo it, Don't you wish we could do that in life? Just hit the undo button. Cool, so that's about it. And so that's what I did with color correcting. And what I'll do with that is I will copy, I'll hit Command-C if you're on a Mac, or Control-C, I believe, if you're on a PC. And so I will copy that clip, and then I will highlight all of the camera 1 clips, and then I will just copy and paste, and I will paste the, so the shortcut to paste in Premiere is Option V. And so you see here, so make sure you don't paste motion, but you're pasting the color effects. So once I do that, then you have the same color on all of the clips. And sometimes when you use a second camera, the color might be a little bit different. So the color here is a little bit different than it is for camera 1. But I did the same thing with my camera 2. I colored it and then I also pasted it to all of the camera 2, pasted that color effect. So yeah, and then that's it. And then I will always watch it through 1 or 2 times just to make sure I didn't miss anything, that there's no glitches, that, just to make sure everything looks good. And then after that, I'll render it actually. So because I have that yellow line here, that means I need to render. So I'll hit Option R and that will render out. So I'm not going to wait for it this time, but that'll take a few minutes to render. So if you see a red bar or a yellow bar, that means you want to render it. All the information, just kind of has to come together. So once I'm done with that, I will come to File, Export Media. And for this case, because I'm editing for our large widescreen in the auditorium, I'm going to leave it this size, but typically I will format it in H.264. You can do match source, high bitrate, and then I'll come down here and hit profile. Just to get the best quality, I'll hit profile high, I'll render at max depth, and I will use maximum render quality. And then I will export. And then that's it. And it'll take a few minutes to export. If you come over here, this will ask you where you want to save your video. And yeah, then you can hit export and you are good to go. So yeah, I hope that gives a little bit of insight to how I create these stories. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions or anything